Project ECHELON, the global surveillance network above the Earth, a satellite drifts silently through the void. From its antennas pour invisible threads, radio waves, phone signals, encrypted messages, all pulsing through the ionosphere like veins of light. Every second, billions of words cross this ocean of data. And somewhere deep inside a classified server room, machines listen. They listen for everything. Your voice. My words. The whispers of entire nations. This is Project ECHELON, a system so vast, so secret, and so deeply woven into our daily lives that most people have never realized they're part of it. It began not with the internet, but with fear. Fear of the Soviets, fear of nuclear war, fear of silence. Born in the ashes of World War II, ECHELON was the Western world's attempt to build an ear that could never sleep. An alliance of machines and men who decided that to be safe, one must see and hear everything. Chapter 1. Origins of the Invisible Network. The story begins in 1946. The Second World War has ended, but a new kind of conflict is already unfolding. One fought not on battlefields, but in frequencies. The United States, still haunted by the surprise of Pearl Harbor, vows never to be caught off guard again. To achieve that, they need more than spies. They need ears everywhere. Out of this paranoia emerges a secret alliance, the UKUSA Agreement, a post-war intelligence pact between the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Its goal is simple but monumental: intercept Soviet communications, track military radio signals, and decode encrypted transmissions. It's the birth of a global listening web, one that would soon evolve far beyond its original purpose. In the early days, the technology is primitive. Massive antennas rise from the ground like metallic forests. Operators sit with headphones, tuning across shortwave frequencies, writing down intercepted messages by hand. But as the Cold War intensifies, the network expands, and technology accelerates. By the late 1950s, the U.S. has launched the first spy satellites. Each orbiting eye feeds streams of data to listening posts across the world. From Menwith Hill in northern England to Pine Gap in the Australian desert, from Gander in Canada to Sugar Grove in West Virginia, new bases appear like stars on a secret map. Their purpose: to capture every whisper from the skies, every signal crossing an ocean, every transmission that might reveal Soviet intentions. The world is being wired for surveillance. Then comes a revolution: computers. By the 1960s, the NSA realizes that no human team can process this volume of data. So it begins developing early filtering systems, machines capable of sorting and classifying intercepted messages by keyword. At first, the focus is military: missile telemetry, radar data, submarine communications. But as networks grow and civilian technology explodes, telephones, telexes, faxes, the scope widens. By the 1970s, ECHELON is born, a code name for an automated interception and analysis system unlike anything before it. It doesn't just collect. It categorizes. It decides what is relevant and what is not. Each intercepted message is scanned for selectors, specific names, locations, or phrases that trigger deeper analysis. It's the first digital filter of the human world. The 5 nations divide the planet like a digital empire. The US watches the Americas. The UK covers Europe and the Atlantic. Australia and New Zealand monitor the Pacific. Canada listens to the Arctic and North Atlantic. Together, they form what will later be known as the Five Eyes Alliance. 5 democracies bound by one truth: that knowledge is power, and power demands total surveillance. At first, the system is justified by fear. Every intercepted signal could mean a nuclear strike, a Soviet maneuver, a spy in disguise. But as the years pass, ECHELON's reach grows, and its targets change. The network designed to watch the enemy begins to watch everyone. And somewhere deep in the archives of the NSA, an idea starts to take shape: that maybe the only way to protect the world is to record it. Chapter 2. 5 Eyes, One Mind. By the mid-1970s, the world had changed, but the alliance had not. What began as a temporary pact to monitor Soviet communications had grown into a vast intelligence organism spanning 5 continents. Its name was no longer spoken aloud but whispered in the corridors of military bases and embassies, ECHELON. And behind it stood a partnership unlike anything in history, the Five Eyes Alliance. The Five Eyes, the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, had become a single distributed intelligence machine. Each nation was responsible for a region of the globe, intercepting data and feeding it into a shared analytical core. No longer 5 separate services, but one global network with 1,000 ears listening day and night. At Fort Meade, Maryland, the headquarters of the National Security Agency, data from every corner of the world converged. Messages plucked from satellites, microwave towers, and undersea cables poured into enormous mainframes the size of small buildings. Early computers like Cray supercomputers began to automate what no human mind could handle, billions of intercepted signals every day. Each fragment, a word, a number, a call sign, was stored, analyzed, and cross-referenced. The British counterpart, GCHQ in Cheltenham, mirrored this effort. Their base at Menwith Hill, hidden in the moors of Yorkshire, became the largest electronic eavesdropping site on Earth. Its radar domes, those iconic white spheres, concealed massive satellite dishes aimed at geostationary orbits. They didn't just listen to Soviet channels anymore, they listened to everyone. Australia's Pine Gap focused on the Asia-Pacific, intercepting missile telemetry and microwave transmissions from Southeast Asia and China. Canada's CFS Leitrim monitored Arctic frequencies and polar communications. New Zealand's Waihopai station, added later, served as the Southern Relay, the network's invisible gateway to the Pacific. Together, these nodes formed a neural network before the digital age, a primitive version of what today would be called a global AI. Each base fed its intelligence into a single analytical pipeline where algorithms searched for keywords, selectors like names, phone numbers, or specific phrases. The system could automatically flag suspicious content, link it to their signals, and reconstruct conversations across continents. By the late 1970s, ECHELON had developed its own internal language. Every intercepted message was tagged with priority codes, Moire, Umbra, Gamma. Analysts no longer read everything. They relied on the machine to decide what mattered. For the first time in history, human intelligence had begun to outsource judgment to an algorithm. It was a leap in power and a quiet moral collapse. What had started as a tool to defend democracy was becoming something else, a digital consciousness built to watch without emotion. The cooperation between the Five Eyes was both brilliant and dangerous. By pooling their resources, they had achieved a level of omnisciency no single nation could rival. But in doing so, they had also erased accountability. If a surveillance program was too controversial in one country, it could be executed in another. The United States could spy on British citizens while the UK monitored Americans, and then they simply traded the data. Legally separate, morally identical. Deep inside the Alliance's archives, reports detailed the system's capabilities. ECHELON could monitor not just military signals, but civilian communications, phone calls, faxes, telex messages, even nearly digital transmissions. As global communications moved from analog to satellite, ECHELON's appetite grew exponentially. Each new cable laid under the sea was one more vein feeding its artificial bloodstream. By the early 1980s, the Five Eyes were not just intercepting intelligence, they were shaping it. Political leaders across the West received information filtered through ECHELON's lens. It was no longer merely a surveillance tool. It had become the invisible infrastructure of Western power, a silent advisor whispering in the ears of governments. Yet very few outside the Alliance even knew it existed. To the public, signals intelligence was just a Cold War abstraction. To those inside, it was the nervous system of a new kind of empire, an empire built not on land or armies, but on information. And like any empire, it had begun to believe in its own necessity. As one NSA analyst would later admit in a declassified memo, the system has grown beyond control. It sees everything, and because it sees everything, it cannot stop. What no one realized yet was that this omniscient machine was about to turn its gaze inward. Soon, ECHELON would no longer just listen to enemies abroad, but Towelis and citizens at home. Chapter 3. The Machine Listens to Everyone. The Cold War ended, but the machine did not. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the world celebrated what it thought was the dawn of transparency. The enemy was gone. The arms race was over. But for ECHELON, the fall of the USSR was not an ending. It was freedom. Freed from its original purpose, the system turned its antennas toward a new world, a world of phones, faxes, and digital communication. And as humanity connected, ECHELON adapted. For the first time in history, a surveillance network designed to track armies began to listen to everyone. Throughout the 1990s, fiber optics and satellites replaced radio. Globalization accelerated, and so did the data flow. Corporations, embassies, journalists, and private citizens were now sending vast quantities of unencrypted information across oceans, all of it passing through points that ECHELON could reach. The machine didn't need wars anymore to justify its existence. It just needed information. At Fort Meade, the NSA expanded exponentially. New supercomputers were installed, capable of analyzing entire continents' worth of communication traffic in real time. Software systems like Dictionary and Silkworth automated keyword scanning, each nation in the Five Eyes Alliance sharing databases off-rigger words. Any email, phone call, or fax containing one of those keywords could be captured, stored, and analyzed. The target didn't need to be a spy or a soldier. It could be anyone. When a British intelligence analyst named Margaret Newsham revealed in 1988 that ECHELON had been monitoring American senators' phone calls, her testimony was dismissed. But later leaks confirmed her story. The system that was built to protect democracy had quietly begun spying on it. In Europe, the first major crack in secrecy came in 1999, when investigative journalists and European Parliament reports exposed ECHELON to the public. The revelations were staggering. The Five Eyes were not only listening to foreign militaries, they were intercepting commercial negotiations, diplomatic talks, even private citizens' communications. Companies like Airbus, journalists covering human rights, and government ministries were all listed among its intercepts of interest. The justification was always the same: national security. But behind closed doors, ECHELON had become something else, a tool for economic espionage and political leverage. At Menwith Hill, British operators intercepted satellite links carrying European business deals. At Pine Gap, Australian technicians listened to Southeast Asian leaders. In New Zealand, agents at Waihopai monitored Pacific communications for potential threats, often code for trade discussions. The world's free nations had quietly created a global panopticon, a surveillance state without borders. In 2001, journalist Duncan Campbell, who spent decades investigating ECHELON, described it as the first industrial-scale interception system in history. His reports detailed how the Five Eyes had automated their watch, millions of intercepts per hour, filtered by algorithms, then cross-referenced by AI prototypes decades ahead of their time. By then, ECHELON was no longer a project. It was a permanent organism, self-sustaining, self-justifying, expanding with every technological leap. And still, the world remained silent. Politicians denied its existence. Media attention faded. The network buried itself deeper into the infrastructure of the internet, quietly feeding on the global flow of communication. Then came September 11th, 2001. Overnight, the machine's quiet listening turned into a roar. In the name of counterterrorism, ECHELON was reborn, legitimized, expanded, and merged with new systems like PRISM and XKeyscore. What was once secret was now official policy. Surveillance wasn't a hidden program anymore. It was the foundation of global security. And yet, one question lingered among those who knew the truth. ECHELON could monitor everyone. Who was monitoring ECHELON? The alliance that began as 5 nations against the Soviets had become a single digital brain observing the entire world, a network that knew no moral boundaries, no geographical limits, and no off switch. In trying to protect freedom, the democracies of the West had built something that understood neither freedom nor restraint. It listened to the world, and for the first time, the world had started to whisper back. Chapter 4. From Cables to the Cloud. In the early 2000s, the world was redefined by fear. After the attacks of September 11, 2001, governments across the globe reoriented their priorities overnight. And for the intelligence community, one phrase became law: never again. The Five Eyes Alliance, long hidden in bureaucratic shadows, suddenly stepped into the light. ECHELON, once denied and disavowed, was reborn under a new justification: counterterrorism. Surveillance was no longer something to conceal. It was a patriotic duty. And for the first time, its vast machinery was directly linked to the digital infrastructure that connected billions of lives. The Patriot Act gave the NSA unprecedented authority. Private companies, telecom giants, internet providers, and cloud services were quietly compelled to cooperate. Fiber optic cables carrying the world's data were tapped at their roots, where they surfaced in American or Allied territory. Every message, every transaction, every photograph uploaded to the internet passed through one of these gateways. And ECHELON, now merged with modern systems like Prism, Tempora, and XKeyscore, learned to live inside them. At GCHQ in Cheltenham, new data centers came online, enormous halls filled with racks of servers humming day and night. Each second, they absorbed terabytes of raw information: phony metadata, GPS locations, social media posts, and the endless chatter of digital life. Software codenamed Mastering the Internet scanned global web traffic, searching for behavioral patterns, keywords, and even emotions. The human race had never been so connected or so transparent. What began as radio interception had evolved into total digital immersion. ECHELON's architecture, originally built to track Soviet transmissions, now analyzed everything from emails to satellite imagery, from WhatsApp texts to financial transfers. The network's eyes extended into the deep ocean, where undersea cables pulsed with light, arteries of data that few people ever think about, but which carry 95% of global communication. Wherever those cables touched land, listening stations waited. The Alliance's reach grew in silence. New Zealand monitored Pacific fiber lines. Australia oversaw Asia's data flows. Britain and the United States split Europe and Africa between them. Canada handled Arctic communications and northern satellite feeds. Together, the Five Eyes had turned the planet into a single, digitized battlefield, a map not of geography, but of information. When whistleblower Edward Snowden leaked classified documents in 2013, the world finally saw the full scope of what ECHELON had become. The revelations were staggering: mass data collection, global internet surveillance, cooperation with private tech companies, and shared databases that could profile virtually anyone on Earth. The Five Eyes were still there, unchanged in name, unmatched in power. They had simply moved from antennas and satellites to cloud storage and machine learning. The Snowden files revealed code names that echoed the Cold War: Boundless Informant, Muscular, Tempora, XKeyscore. Each was a child of ECHELON, each expanding the same mission: toe capture, categorize, and predict. The original architecture of keyword scanning had evolved into full-blown algorithmic surveillance. Instead of searching for words, the system now searched for behavior. Who are you talking to? Where are you moving? What do you believe? The machine didn't just listen, it began to understand. By 2015, artificial intelligence was fully integrated into intelligence analysis. Neural networks filtered data faster than any human agency could review it. ECHELON's descendants no longer needed explicit orders. They flagged threats automatically, cross-referencing billions of connections to construct behavioral profiles. It was, in essence, predictive policing on a planetary scale. The technology was extraordinary and unstoppable. Governments around the world adopted similar models. The European Union built INDECT, a real-time surveillance AI for public safety. China's government expanded its Golden Shield project into the Great Firewall, adding facial recognition and social credit algorithms. Every nation was now building its own echelon. For most citizens, the trade-off seemed reasonable. Convenience, safety, and speed in exchange for invisibility. But for those who had built the original system, it was a chilling vindication. The ghost network that once listened for missiles was now inside every smartphone, every router, every cloud server on Earth. The machine had learned not only to hear, but to predict silence. To know when something was missing, when someone had stopped speaking. And in that quiet, the Watchers realized something profound. They no longer needed to chase the truth. The truth was streaming to them willingly, every second of every day. Chapter 5. The World Under Watch. Today, the Cold War is long over. The Berlin Wall has fallen, the missiles are gone, and the fear of nuclear annihilation has faded into history. But Echelon, or what it became, never disappeared. It evolved quietly, merging with algorithms, clouds, and artificial intelligence. What began as a defensive system to protect democracy has transformed into something far more permanent, a digital ecosystem of surveillance that defines the modern world. Every phone call, every message, every purchase, every search, all of it feeds the same hunger for information that began in the bunkers of Fort Meade and Menwith Hill half a century ago. What once required satellites and supercomputers now happens invisibly, automatically through the devices we hold in our hands. The Watchers no longer need antennas or listening posts. They have us. Across the globe, the architecture of Echelon has been reborn under new names and new laws. In Russia, the SORM system monitors online traffic nationwide. In China, the Skynet network uses millions of cameras tied to facial recognition AI. In the West, surveillance lives behind euphemisms: national security, data protection, user analytics. Different justifications, identical outcomes. Every government, every corporation has inherited Echelon's DNA to know everything. The Five Eyes Alliance still exists, stronger than ever. Now expanded through agreements with France, Germany, Japan, and South Korea, the network has become what intelligence experts call the 14 Eyes. Information flows faster than politics, faster than law. A photo shared in London can be analyzed in Washington within seconds. A conversation in Sydney can be flagged by an algorithm in Ottawa before it ends. Borders mean nothing to data. But the most disturbing evolution of all is that humans no longer drive it. Machine learning systems now sort and categorize global communications automatically, trained on decades of Echelon data. These systems can build psychological profiles, predict political movements, and identify anomalies, anyone whose behavior deviates from the statistical norm. In short, they can define what normal means. And once machines define normality, deviation itself becomes a threat. Governments claim these tools prevent terrorism and cyber warfare. And sometimes they do. But they also create something new. A civilization where silence is suspicious, privacy is extinct, and transparency is mandatory, for everyone except those in power. The Watchers are no longer accountable because their gaze has become automated. This is the true legacy of Echelon, not a program, but a philosophy. The belief that safety requires omniscience. That to prevent danger you must see all, hear all, know all. And that the cost of that knowledge is freedom itself. Edward Snowden once described the modern surveillance state as turnkey tyranny. The infrastructure for control already exists. All it needs is someone to turn the key. The machine is built, the code is written, the network is alive. Whether it's used for security or oppression is now only a matter of time and intent. Yet perhaps the most chilling truth is this: Echelon didn't just reshape governments. It reshaped humanity. Billions of people now live under constant observation, not by fear, but by habit. We tag our locations, record our voices, stream our lives. We are no longer forced to give our data. We offer it. The machine no longer listens through force. It listens because we've invited it in. In that sense, the world Echelon dreamed of, a planet under perfect watch, has already arrived. And the line between observer and observed has vanished. We have all become both. The eye that never blinked no longer needs to. ECHELON began as a weapon of fear. It became a promise of safety. And now it is simply the way the world works. The old war for information is over. The machines have won, not through domination, but through convenience. And as the hum of data replaces the sound of missiles, one question remains: was this ever about protection or control?